Take a look behind the curtain with a real whistleblower and American patriot. Prepare to embrace the uncomfortable truth because this program has no time for comforting lies. Here is civil liberties enthusiast, Second Amendment defender, and recovering FBI agent Kyle Seraphin.
Well, hello, my friends, and welcome to today's Kyle Seraphin Show. It is Monday. It is January the 19th, and I think today is a federal holiday, but I don't really know because I don't work for the federal government anymore, and I don't keep track of that. I had a lot of messages of people asking me, hey, man, is there going to be a show today? I mean, why wouldn't there be a show today? It's Monday. It's freaking Monday. And as things start cooling off here in Texas, we got our first sub-freezing weather, which was interesting. It's starting to heat up in Minnesota. I still don't know what the end game is, but we're going to talk about it. And I do think that the situation in Minnesota is showing us that the majority of Americans are too ignorant to even understand what's happening. And it's actually a really, really bad thing when Americans don't understand civics. They don't actually understand how the system that they are cheering on some facet of works. And as they don't understand it, they are crying about symptoms instead of focusing on the actual fundamental disease. And that's it. We're tribal. We're experiencing a separation of people who are not willing to speak to each other. We got real issues with being able to decide whether or not we even want to save this thing, whatever this thing is. And I keep having a couple of different folks point out to me. I've had now two friends of mine in positions to talk to some decent folks with knowledge say that we don't have elections. We don't have even a constitutional republic, as much as we'd like to believe that that's the case. We have this veneer of constitutionality. We have this veneer of choice. And it's actually getting so threadbare that I think that we're actually punching through and we're seeing all the actual holes in it. And they can't keep lying to people long enough to keep everybody, you can't keep handing people hopium and thinking it's going to work. I've got this great clip that was circulating this weekend on social media, letting folks know accountability is coming from the MAGA mouthpieces. The conspiracy charges are coming. I'll play it to you. I'm not going to ruin the surprise, but if some of you saw this and you didn't know the context, it's going to maybe help let you know that we've got this serious problem of people who don't even understand what it is that they're cheering on. So that's where we're going to go with today's program. We're also going to remind you that I guess now it's cold here in Texas. It's finally, let's see here. Let me look at my screen real quick. It's 37 degrees. It was colder yesterday and some winds. So it's finally getting to the point where we can talk about maybe worrying about, I don't know, winter survival and these sorts of things. This is the focus for my friends over. Where did I go? Why am I gone? Bring me back. Hold on a second here, guys. There we are. Okay. So, it's only been a few weeks into winter here. It's not even real winter here in Texas, but we've got some cold starting to roll in finally. Some of you are getting snowstorms. I know some of you are getting massive power outages or all kinds of sub-frigid weather, sub-zero weather. And if you start thinking about these things, you wonder, hey, what happens if all the power goes out? How do we keep our family warm? Can be a real problem. Winter power outages kill people. It happens, usually in places like Texas, where we don't experience real cold on any given day. And then it just rolls in and freezes everything. And the windmills stop and the power stops going and the pipes burst and everyone freaks the heck out. Many of you guys should be considering getting yourself a Vesta off-grid heater, something you can buy from My Patriot Supply. And the website is mypatriotsupply.com/KYLE. It's part of their winter survival bundle. It runs on canned heat, so you can burn it inside. You can cook food on it. That's good. You can keep it in a room that keeps you guys going. You just stash it in your closet. You just break it out whenever you need it, so you don't have to panic about what happens if we cannot turn on the furnace. The furnace doesn't work. Now, if you guys are in the northern areas where you've got like pot-bellied stoves and other things, you guys have already figured this out. This is mostly for my friends like me who live in places that are, generally speaking, pretty temperate. And then suddenly you think, uh-oh, now what do we do? Winters can always bring you unexpected problems. If you guys want to make sure you guys can tough it out if something weird were to happen, the Winter Survival Kit is just a preparedness thing that you can hold on to. We've got an entire cabinet full of canned heat here at the Seraphin house. They're giving you free gifts with the Winter Survival Kit at mypatriotsupply.com/KYLE. Again, it's mypatriotsupply.com/Kyle. If you're watching on TV, you could just scan it. And sorry, I disappeared from the ad here for a second. Hopefully we don't have any more weird Monday stuff. Let's get into today's show starting right now. All right. Symptom, disease, what I see, and this is exactly why I did today's thumbnail. So let's check out today's thumbnail real quick. I'm going to put it on the screen. I think you guys should be able to see it. There it is. ICE enforces laws that are passed by Congress. That is the simplest way for us to discuss this problem. What we have are people who do not realize that they can't just cry about abolishing ICE, that it cannot be done by some sort of executive move. By the way, the executive has actually showed that they're behind what they're doing. The problem is Congress. This seems like an ongoing issue that we point out here at this program. Do people not realize that the members of Congress are meant to be the single most powerful branch of our government? They are the Article I powers. They were the first ones discussed. They have almost all of the important stuff. The executive is just supposed to execute. They're just supposed to do what Congress lays out. It's not meant to be ruled by a king. It's not meant to be ruled by a mob. And it turns out, since we broke the Senate, we don't even have the thing that we used to have, this veneer of constitutionality, this idea that there's an upper and a lower house and checks and balances. We don't have any of those things anymore. We're living in a time where people are upset about government doing the only thing that it is meant to do. And so let's just consider this idea. When you no longer have the government in a Western civilization, and that's just broadly speaking what we're talking about here in America, when you no longer have the government holding a monopoly on legitimate violence, and we'll talk about what that is in a second, but if the government no longer holds the monopoly on violence, I think that you enter what I would call a failed state. I don't know how else to describe it, but the function of Western civilization is outsource violence away from people with passions and ulterior motives and individual motivations that may be, personal. And you set it out against what's supposed to be a relatively objective standard. This is what the law is. These are the things you can, and these are the things you cannot do. And we don't handle it ourselves. We don't do vigilante violence. We don't do mob or posse violence where we go out and say, you're the problem. We don't like you, so we're going to hang you. You're the issue. We're going to tar and feather you and run you out of town on a rail. You can no longer be here. You have a right to due process, in theory. That's the idea, that we've outsourced sort of the passions of man, and we've put it into a system that's slightly removed from us. But the crazy thing is we've imported all of these people from places where that doesn't exist. They don't have that. Their systems are already so corrupt that they have no faith in them, so mob justice may be the only way they get any justice. And we're starting to see that culture. The crazy thing is usually when something bad comes in and interacts with you, those of you who have kids, you know this, you don't say your good child is going to rub off on their bad friends. That's never the thing we're really worried about. It's never the way it really works out, is it? What we worry about is that the bad stuff that their friends are doing is going to rub off on our kids. So we go, you can't hang around that little boy or that little girl anymore. You can't hang out with that group of friends. Those people are going to rub off on you, and you're going to be the one who pays the price. You hang out with a bunch of people who are stealing cars, you're probably going to be the one, the first time that you decide to crack a lock or break a window, you're probably going to be the one who gets caught because you haven't been doing it nearly as long, and you're going to be the one who's going to have a problem for it. We don't want that rubbing off on our kids. We brought a bunch of people here into this country that do not have an understanding of what the American justice system is supposed to look like, what the monopoly on violence means, that it goes to the state, and we actually hold fast and we don't go out there and just take out people because we feel that they've done something that is unjust, by and large. But as you guys are saying in the chat, you import the third world, you become the third world. It rubs off on us, and it is rubbing off on us. And I'm going to give you some examples of that. And the other piece of it is that we are seeing this disingenuous connection between law enforcement doing the job that they are meant to do, as they are meant to do it, and somehow that means that they are signing off on or doing the work of the federal government. So the first little clip I want to play you, I think shows you the broader problem. Democrats have done a really good job, and I say Democrats not because I think that it's a political party thing, but just that's who's the ones who are messaging this particular issue. Democrats have messaged that we will not allow our law enforcement to do their actual job if it actually does some benefit to the federal government's deportation processes. And that means, quote unquote, cooperation with ICE. And in doing so, what they've done is they've stopped the ability of their cops to protect their citizens from stupidity, from dangerous scenarios. How many times have you guys seen a police officer who is parked near a flood zone and the water is rising over the top of, let's say, a bridge? And maybe it's still drivable, but there's a cop there telling people, whoa, turn around, go back. The waters are rising. We don't want you to drive through a flood. That's because somebody has decided that it is in the best interest of the public in general to turn around and shut down this bridge, and they do so with a cop. Does that mean that the cop is doing the work of the bridge engineers or the water conservation people or the people that are supposed to be doing flood mitigation and management? No, they're just saying this is a hazard, and you are now being warned that there's a hazard. In the same way, when you don't post a cop outside of a federal operation that's going to go do a knock and talk, or it's going to go do an early morning takedown, or whatever it is that they're doing to do enforcement operations that they have the legal charter to do. Again, ICE is not making up their own priorities. These priorities were set out by Congress. They are funded by Congress. For all the crying that we had on the right about the FBI, who funded it? Everybody. Who signed off on a bill that made sure that we still had an FBI? The guys who are getting out there and fundraising on the injustices and the injustices that are happening because of these groups. ICE is doing the job that they are appointed to do. Whether they're doing it great or not, that's another story. That can be worked out in court. That can be worked out through legislators who want to go ahead and refine the priorities, the authorities, and even the tactics and tools they can use. They can fund it individually the way they want. They haven't done it because they're lazy. They'd rather go out there and get the mob inflamed. But what are the local police officers doing? They're failing the public, and they're doing so by not stopping interactions that could be non-favorable to the citizens that pay for them. Just in the same way, you may have a big truck like I do, and you think, well, no big deal. I'm going to drive across this bridge. It's freaking 9 inches of water, and I've got 18 inches of clearance. No big deal. I'm just going to roll through. And you tell the cop, hey, I'm going through. Thanks so much. Like, have a great day. Roll through in your 8,000-pound truck. But maybe you're a person in a minivan, and you don't want to make that risk, and you didn't make that assessment. You were driving up, and there's a cop that says, hey, by the way, federal operation, you can't go through here right now. And you go, well, I really need to go that way. It's like, you need to find another route. This is not a safe way for you to do this, especially if you have kids in the car. Then they go, oh, okay, I'll just drive around. I'll find the alternate route. I'm going to go 3 blocks over, and then I'll be fine. This is what you're taking away from the citizenry. When people like Abigail Spanberger, who just was elected in Virginia, says we are no longer going to cooperate with ICE. It's not about ICE. It's about your job as a police officer to serve and protect, which is a very different role than what the federal government has when it comes to executive enforcement of federal law.
And this executive order rescinds executive order number 47. State and local law enforcement should not be required to divert their limited resources to enforce federal civil immigration laws. It is a responsibility of federal law enforcement. Virginia state and local law enforcement officers must be able to focus on their core responsibilities, investigating crime and community policing.
I mean, I think we all agree. Yeah, they should be doing that. And one of the ways they do that is they keep people away from federal enforcement scenes. This is not them saying we are helping them do their job. What it says is we are doing the job that we have to mandate from the public. We make sure that the government itself has a mandate on violence, the only violence. It should be the monopoly. And when it doesn't, then you end up having guys chased down in the streets because people think that somebody is involved in something they're not. When the police stop doing their job, then the mob picks up, and they usually have less intelligence, they have less training, they have less sophisticated ways of doing it, and it looks something like what's going on in Minnesota right now. Well, I'm not going to show you video of Jake Lang getting the crap beat out of him. I had this mixed feeling about Jake Lang, who got beat the hell up over the weekend. Number one, he's been asking for that because he wants that attention. That's my take on it. That doesn't mean that it's justifiable to beat somebody up who's being an a-hole, generally. And the bigger problem is this, and for those of you who don't know who Jake Lang is, Jake Lang was a J6er who got into fight with cops, who put on a gas mask, who picked up a baseball bat, and was aggressively and offensively swinging against police officers on January 6th. I think, personal opinion here, that Jake Lang is a complete dirtbag. And he used to call me from prison on a regular basis, and I never took his calls, and his people would text me, and he somehow managed to run like a freaking podcast out of a prison cell. All of that stuff is problematic. But I don't think the people that beat the crap out of Jake Lang this weekend knew Jake Lang the way that I know about Jake Lang. They don't know the issues with him. Maybe they know about what he was doing in Minnesota or in Michigan the other day, where he's taking a pig's head and rubbing it on a Koran. And do I think that's a problem? Not for me. I don't really care. I understand that you're doing something that's inflammatory on purpose. I think Jake Lang is basically the male version of Valentina Gomez, who's that woman that shoots things in effigy. She's from Colombia, but she shoots a flamethrower to the Quran and some other like it's a shock jock sort of tactic. But I would say that the people that beat the crap out of him in Minnesota didn't know who he was, doesn't know that people like me and maybe people like you think he's a fraud. They just thought he was a guy on the right. He's a conservative activist, which is why he needed to get the crap beat out of him. That actually is worse, it turns out. If they were beating him up for the reasons that Jake Lang is the person that he is, they'd be like, yeah, you kind of earned that in America. Like, you got your comeuppance. Doesn't mean it's legal. Doesn't mean it's righteous. Doesn't mean I think it's okay. You should be able to do those things and still not be, beaten up in America. And yet, it's kind of predictable if you act like a complete dummy that you might have some dummy consequences. But that's not why they did it. They picked him because they thought he was something specific. And that something was broad. It was probably what you are, just holding beliefs and supported ICE. And here's my example of that, running down some random dude because he's wearing camouflage in Minnesota in the middle of the winter. Pretty confident that that's a common thing that people have. I've met a lot of people from the northern Midwest, and wearing camo does not indicate anything about your politics or anything else as far as I could tell, but it could get your ass beat on the street of Minneapolis right now.
Wait a minute. Let him up. Police. Let him up. Okay. Look. Hey, get up. Let him go. Get your ass up. You good? Okay. That's what they asked. That's all they asked. Watch out. That's all they asked. He's one of us. Okay. He's one of us. Okay, good. I'm one of them. You all right, dude? You all right? Come on, breathe. He's one of us. How do we know? How we know? I was with him earlier. Why you get ran out earlier? I don't know. He's one of us.
What does that even mean, one of us? I mean, I'm seeing the thing from Wolf of Wall Street. It's like, one of us. No, there is no us. Who is us? They've picked a team. They've gotten so tribal that now we're just openly saying that if you don't believe the way that I do, that maybe we should beat the shit out of you and leave you on the sidewalk bleeding in the freezing cold. This is coming from mainstream media and people who wear sweaters, and it's coming from people that wear masks on their face and do Antifa stuff. It doesn't make a difference. It's coming aggressively, and I think the right has not quite gotten there yet. But it's getting there, and one way to do it is to go into a church, to kick the doors down and roll into a church and interrupt a worship service in violation of federal law. We saw what happened under the Biden administration. If you do that, nothing. We saw what happens if you were to sit outside of a abortion clinic and you were just saying, hey, I don't like abortion, and we're going to sing a sim. We're going to pray for you. That can get you in federal prison. Apparently doing a violent invasion of a worship service because you believe, whether or not it's true or not, that somebody in there works for ICE. That's problematic. And it comes from the same mouthpieces that they've been listening to. This is Jim Acosta dropping the veil. Remember when he pretended he was like the subjective journalist? They all kind of do. Don Lemon had his moment, and Jim Acosta did his as well. You guys probably haven't heard his name in a while. He's just 100% not biased, journalistic professional talking to this woman, Jennifer Welch, who I don't know why she has a career. She's hideous to look at. And I only say that because she did it to herself. It's not like she's a hideous human being like by nature. There's surgeries. There are procedures that are being done that make her look like the person she is. Shrill. Like you look at her face and you can already hear what her voice is. And you're like, I don't want to hear any of this. And then there's Jim Acosta, and everything about him is smug. And so like you have shrill and smug, and this is a perfect marriage of why people are listening to this and going, okay, yeah, like whoever associates with this, those people have already bought into a certain us versus them mentality.
What's it like in DC with the MAGA takeover? Is it different or the vibe's different?
Oh, Jesus Christ. It is, it's my worst nightmare.
Can we also just like hone in on his first move is to blaspheme? Anyway.
What's it like in DC with the MAGA takeover? Is it different or the vibe's different?
Oh, Jesus Christ. It is, it's my worst nightmare. I thought we were rid of this clown 4 years ago, but no, they've come back with a vengeance. Fortunately, the DC restaurant scene is set up where, you know, the MAGA people have their restaurants and their places they like to go, and they're not the places I like to go.
Okay.
So I won't say where those places are because I don't want them to show up there, but so far so good. It's okay.
He blasphemes, and his worst nightmare, I'm just going to take him at his own words. I know he's using hyperbolic language, so this is not his actual worst nightmare, but what a weird thing to say. Your worst nightmare is that you may have to share a restaurant with someone who holds different political beliefs than you. Seriously, that's your worst nightmare? My worst nightmare is someone snatching one of my children and doing something horrible to them, and me having to basically lose my soul because I'm going to go after those people with everything that exists in my body. My worst nightmare is that someone tries to hurt my children in a place where I'm unable to do something about it. And then I spend the rest of my life going after them because I don't have any other purpose, because I've lost the ability to see things rationally. His worst nightmare is that he has to share a restaurant with a MAGA person, apparently. Yes, I don't believe that's his actual worst nightmare. What a sadly pathetic thing to say out loud. And by the way, the left does not have a monopoly on these fake, fraudulent, step up and say things for clicks type people. You guys remember Ashley Sinclair? I got told for a long time, I've seen her at conservative type events. She's friends with people who share generally conservative ideas. Ashley Sinclair is the twice single mother. She has a single mother of, she's got a baby from a New York chiropractor who apparently has some money, and then she has a baby from Elon Musk. She went out and talked to the other kind of like most ridiculous human being that exists in the media space, this woman named Taylor Loren. We haven't talked about her in a long time. So I saw this clip running around, and imagine what it is that you're falling victim to or your friends are falling victim to as non-critical consumers of news information. These are the people that say, well, I really like this person, or I really trusted this person. And anytime I hear those words, it's like, well, I trust what Sean Hannity tells me. I trust what Tucker Carlson tells me. I trust what even Kyle Seraphin tells me. It's like, why? How many of you have met me face to face, shook my hand, looked me in the eye? We look in the eye to eye in this program, but you don't actually know. I'll just tell you, you don't actually know that I'm saying the things that I believe. I am. You think you know, and it probably comes across pretty genuinely. But you don't know me. You don't know these people. You don't know this lady who decided to have two. Why do we look at people who at least the fruits of their life don't even bear out the thing that we would think would be, representations of their values? I can look at a lot of people in the so-called like conservative influence space. I'm like, you're a conservative, you're unmarried, you have no children, you have nothing that ties you to traditional conservative values. You don't live conservatively. What are you conserving? Conservatives. But we're like, well, they have a pretty face, and I like what they say. They say things that are based. This is our politicians. This is our influencers, whatever the heck that means. This is our media figures. This is the sort of bizarre celebrity sphere of social media and real media. Like, you don't have to have all the things, but you can look at somebody's thing. If you see someone who's been a single mom twice with two men unmarried, that tells you that they're not conservative the way that I'm telling you that I'm conservative. I've been married one time. I'm still married to that person. We have 4 children. We would accept more children into our life. We saw some real hard things. So did some of you. If you were digging a ditch, I would dig with you. I've actually dug ditches for people who look like they were too old to be digging. I said, why don't you tell me an interesting story and I'll dig the ditch. You can tell people by the fruits. How is this lady anywhere influencing anyone? And why is she someone that is going out and doing conservative policy and messaging? And why would it interact with you in a favorable way? They do this because it's successful, by the way. We've got to be smarter about what we consume.
Got involved with different conservative companies behind the scenes as opposed to public facing. And I did a lot of the influencery stuff, but most of my work was primarily operations of different conservative organizations, different production companies, different campaign companies until can you feel the regret where you think back? I feel like I get like trauma flashbacks sometimes.
First of all, I get trauma flashbacks and I was when you.
For real, this is like so crazy. Like 2 girls just chilling there, no man in their lives. That's the reggae. That's the reggae talk that we discussed with Steve Friend. If you didn't watch our Friday episode, Steve came to this brilliant conclusion that reggae is it flips the up and the down beats, and that's what these women do when they speak. They flip the up and the down inflections. Some of you put some really funny comments on there on ways to name this syndrome, and I love it. Inflection confusion syndrome and some other stuff like that. But at the end of the day, why does that woman have a job doing those things? It's because it's effective, because somebody is willing to pay her to message to you, and you or people like you consume it. And we've called it slop, and that's kind of lazy. But being pretty shouldn't be enough to mix into the conservative value space. And I continue to have this online debate with people, and I'll do it every day. I'll do it to you guys right now. People are upset because Donald Trump has now endorsed a quote-unquote rhino to get rid of quote-unquote rhino Bill Cassidy. And this goes to the broader problem, I think. We don't really have elections. We have these selections. If you believe that we are having legitimate discussions, we're not figuring out who should be there in the primary. When I say we, I mean people who are conservative, not necessarily Republicans. But everybody who is a conservative that I know and also is registered as a Republican thinks that we conservatives, lowercase c, not the uppercase C brand thing, we lowercase c conservatives are the meat and potatoes of this political party called the GOP. And the reason why I'm not a registered Republican is because I don't agree with you. I think we're the minority. I think we can accept that we're the minority. If we're smart about it, you operate like a minority instead of assuming that we're a majority, but nobody listens to us. Then by definition, you have no effect. If you have no ability to mass people that actually agree with you, you know who the majority is? The 50 people that showed up on the street that were able to knock the one guy down who's wearing a camo jacket. That's a majority. That's a functional majority. They were the majority of that perspective on that street. And they also decided that lawlessness was acceptable. And their law enforcement told them as much by the way that they were disengaging from these things, that the law enforcement in that area ceded the monopoly on violence. So now regular people can do it. That's what I would call un-American. But there's nothing that is quote unquote conservative about the GOP as far as I can tell. So all of you act like Republican in name only is a thing. I would suggest to you that that is what the Republican Party is. Squishy, centrist, swampy. And as far as I can tell, everyone always acts like it's like these two wings of the same bird or two wings of the same bat, or, you know, there's a uniparty. I've actually sort of graduated to this really ugly belief that I don't even think that bird or bat or whatever it is an autonomous being. I think it's a puppet. I think that the people that are making the decisions to make these things happen, which I'm not 100% sure what that looks like, they are allowed to work within certain parameters, which is why you get a narrow sphere of people in the GOP primaries. It's why you get a narrow group of people that never seem to accomplish anything. Unless you think anything is coming, I'm going to play you this. It's John Solomon, Just the News, mouthpiece of the Republican Party right now, certainly mouthpiece of Kash Patel and of Donald Trump, positively messaging hope, encouragement, anti-black pilling, anti-infighting. Let's all come together and support this administration. I want you to listen to this, and I'll give you the punchline at the end of it. Tell me what we think of this messaging.
And I think next week, over the next 10 days, the base who's been wondering, where's all that accountability? They're going to get some big surprises over the next week concerning where the conspiracy began a few weeks before Crossfire Hurricane was open and when it ended, all the way in 2024, when they were still trying to pursue Donald Trump to keep him from winning the presidency. There's a big case that's been built by the Justice Department and the FBI. It's been masked by a lot of this infighting and drama and soap opera stuff. But the truth of the matter is, MAGA base Americans are going to be happy when they see where this is all heading in the next few weeks. Kash Patel is going nowhere. I hope Dan Bongino isn't going anywhere, but I do think he's going to take some time over the weekend to think that through.
Oh. At the end there, you can realize that this is not a contemporaneous clip. That didn't just happen. It's being played right now all over social media like somehow John Solomon is promising you arrests are coming. Trust the plan. The storm is rising, or whatever the heck it is these idiots say. That's from July of 2025. So all of you that are listening and just heard John Solomon make you promises that big accountability is coming, can anyone point to me what that accountability looks like? Do any of you know? This was before they arrested Brian Cole Jr. This is before the Epstein Transparency Act, where they are now over 30 days delinquent in meeting the deadlines that Congress has laid out. Did anybody get the accountability? Do you guys all feel pretty good? Now you guys all understand what's going on, right? This is Q posting. This is official Q posting, which is that if we can just keep you hoping long enough to keep donating, then we can continue this on. There was a series of things called demotivators a long time ago. Maybe you guys have seen these. Demotivators were these posters, and they were a parody of the motivator posters. So when you were maybe in the 90s, you had them in your high school or you had them in your workplace, and they would post these things up, and it'd be a picture of like a sunset, and they'd be like, just because every day that ends, a new day will begin, or some nonsensical, like trite thing. They'd have a cat hanging off like a monkey bars, or like have its claws dug into a branch, and it would say, just hang in there. Help's coming, or it gets better, or whatever. The demotivators were my thing. I always thought those were hilarious. And they would say really awful stuff that would remind you that reality is actually not all that positive, and the most perfect person in the world lived and was killed for being not a sinner. How about that? So demotivators were a little bit more realistic. And so I had these ones that were great. One of them was a picture of the United States Congress. It's the picture of the U.S. Capitol, and it said, if you think we have problems, it said government, if you think we have problems, you should see our solutions. Right? Because there are no solutions at all. They just continue the problems, right? And so there was another one that said that, and it said U.S. government consultants, and it was a guy like shaking hands, and it was like a chart or something in the background, and it said government consultants. If you're not going to be part of the solution, there's a ton of money to be made in continuing the problem. How true are those things, which were jokes and quote unquote demotivational, sort of like dark humor in the 90s and the early 2000s? And as we continue on today, it's still true. I used to have those as my backdrop on my computers when I was working for the government, because it was obvious to me right then. It was really obvious. And maybe the biggest symptom of this obvious problem is when the government it just completely shirks the most important responsibility it has. At the very minimum, we can have non-functional government agencies, we can have fraud, we can have grift, we can have people that lie to us to our face, we can have show hearings, we can have bread, and we can have circuses, and all of those things will continue to sort of maintain the status quo just as long as the federal government, the state government, and the local government maintain the legitimate monopoly on use of force. And when that goes away, that's the end. And we are watching that poke through that thin veil that we all kind of believe is like, well, it may be really bad in the news. And I'm going to show you, I've got 20 news articles up here, so we're going to go through those in a second for the next half hour. There may be a lot of these things that are up there that you go like, this is really bad. It's still not really that bad in your neighborhood, most of you. If you walk outside, I can walk in my neighborhood. It's quiet. The cul-de-sac looks nice. The kids can still go play in the park. The pond still has water in it. The fish still are in there. You could still go out there and fish and not have some guy check your papers nonstop. And there's not local cops out there bothering human beings. There's no one creeping through the back of my porch in the middle of the night. I don't have to shoot people trying to get through my door. Okay. So it's not that like catastrophically bad. But what we're seeing is that evil kind of poke through the veil right now. And it all comes down for me at the end of the day to legitimate use of force being owned by the state. And the state is kind of going, maybe not. Maybe we'll just see what happens if we just do nothing. Maybe we'll just let this fizzle out. The first time I saw that poke through in my lifetime, many of you who lived through like the 60s and 70s saw it, but the first time I saw it poke through in my lifetime was in 2020. In the biggest way. It was always kind of up there hanging out in Portland and Seattle, and they had the NWO riots, and that happened, early on, the May Day, it clashes with police, but that was always kind of like quirky things that happened in places that weren't where I lived. But to watch the 2020 insanity roll out from coast to coast, even into our nation's capital, from Portland, where weird things were supposed to happen, to DC, where you'd expect at the very minimum the federal government would say, not that bullshit in my backyard. This is the seat of the United States government. We saw it poke through 5 years ago, 6 years ago now. It's not going away. In fact, it's just kind of brooding and breeding and waiting for opportunity, and that opportunity is now presenting itself. I do want to play you this kind of quirky little moment. This is a CNN clip, I think. Maybe I don't have it. Actually, let me grab it for you because I do think it's useful. It's a reflection on trying to put blame on anybody in particular, saying that one side did this or the other side did this. This is a little CNN interaction with Scott Jennings, who I haven't played a clip from in a little while. So this is kind of fun and sarcastic. It's almost like people are so ignorant of history, they don't even know what the teams were going back within the lifetime of people who were listening to this show. You know, like the protesters that were getting blasted with fire hose or had dogs released on them. Like today's activists, today's pundit media class is so ignorant of history that they're willing to ignore it, or they do know history and they think that the audience that they're playing to, and this is probably more likely, the audience they're playing to doesn't know the history. Since we're on Martin Luther King Day, I think today's Martin Luther King Day, let's play this as sort of a reflection on who were the bad guys back then. And why can we just ignore it today?
You listen to Scott and you listen to all this rhetoric coming out of the Republican Party. These are the same people that defended opening fire hoses on protesters in the 60s on the Selma Bridge. I mean, these are people who consistently
I think those were Democrats, Julie. Just FYI. Those are Democrats.
Scott,
those were Democrats in the 60s.
Scott, people like you
that was your party.
Exactly that kind of behavior.
But thank you for reminding everybody that Democrats were against civil rights.
How about this, Scott? Why don't you let me finish and stop interrupting? Because clearly, whenever anybody tries
you're the one that brought up Democrats. I agree with you. Democrats shouldn't have been against civil rights.
You're the person. Well, there you go. How about this, Scott? Why don't you continue talking, and I'll just sit here and listen to
you.
You know
what, guys? I think we all have each other's X handles where we can continue this conversation.
Let's just make some peace here. That's how cartoonish the fight is, for whatever it's worth. And he was correct. Yeah, these were Democrats. In fact, some of them, one of them was president not too long ago, if you guys recall, was living through all that stuff. How wild. If you guys are watching on X, join us on Rumble or YouTube. We'd really appreciate it. Our YouTube broke 19,000 over the weekend. That's pretty awesome. I appreciate you guys joining us over there on YouTube. So those of you watching on YouTube, give me a thumbs up. Give me the like. I would appreciate that. You can subscribe to the channel if you have not already. If you want to be notified when we go live, it happens at 0930. That's 9:30 in the morning Eastern time, and you can watch without any of the pop-up ads that happen. And if you want to watch it in the after effect, then you can watch it on Rumble or YouTube and get their ad revenue stuff. Or you can watch us over on Spotify, which I would recommend for all of you that are watching in the replay. Check us out on Spotify. You get the video, you get the audio. You can fast forward through any of the commercials you want. You can do all that stuff. KyleSeraphinShow.com. Very easy to do it. Check us out there. We really appreciate you guys supporting that program. I get notifications sometimes from Spotify that we went up 1,000% last year in total views. And at the same time, they said that we're like 15% lower than what we should be for the size of or for the number of people that comment and watch. So make sure you're subscribed on Spotify as well. Again, subscribe, like, share it with a friend. That's the best way you can support this program. It doesn't cost you a penny to do it. The show's always free everywhere. We're not going to cut any of this stuff or put it behind paywalls. So if it's interesting to you, I appreciate you guys sharing that along. And let's do some stories. I got some stories. Some of these are wild. Let's do a pipe bomber story real quick. Joe Hanneman, you guys should be following him. He has a very unfortunate handle on X. If you use X, and I don't recommend everybody do it, but if you do use X, you should follow Joe Hanneman and put notifications on, because he's covering the pipe bomb case from the right side and down more or less down the middle, I would say. He's one of the guys that helped write the stories about this investigation going back a long ways. He's been fixated on January 6th for a long time. A lot of times about the victim stories, which I think are going to come into relevance. And you should follow him. It's Hannah, Hanne, Blaze, Blaze 64. It's not a great handle for X, but it's once you find him, put him on there, get your notifications, and you would get stories like this, which I got over the weekend. And I think it's actually really fascinating. I think it's going to fascinate some of you as well. The defense explosive expert in the Brian Cole Jr. case says that the January 6 devices were incapable of exploding and thus were not bombs at all. And this is an ongoing thing. We are watching a very aggressive defense happening in the Brian Cole Jr. case. It's amazing that there are not leftists, progressive leftists, screaming about an autistic black man being set up for a crime that we believe he didn't commit. I believe that he did not commit. There's more evidence that's going to continue to come out that he did not commit it. And here's the defense filing, which was filed on the 16th. This was before the weekend. And let's run through it real quickly just so you guys can see. They're giving the qualifications of the guy who's talking about it. So this is their expert. Defense can always introduce their own experts. And this is a guy named Brennan Phillips, MSFS. I don't know what that stands for. Maybe it says in here. He is a 30-year combined experience as a military EOD guy. He's a graduate of the United States Naval Explosive Ordnance Disposal, or EOD. If you guys don't know, Navy EOD is kind of the gold standard in the explosive ordnance business. As far as bomb squad people go, the coolest, most capable, most like high-speed people I ever met were Naval EOD. They, deploy with SEAL teams. They get Halo quals. They get dive certifications. I went to airborne school with some of these guys. Absolute freaking studs. And so he went through that school, which is definitely not nothing. Go back and watch the Surviving the Cut if you ever want to see something about Naval EOD. Just as an aside, there was a National Geographic series called Surviving the Cut, and they showed some of the really hard schools that people go through. Navy EOD looked really legit, including some of their water ops that they did. All right, so long and short of it is he did that. He was also a explosive expert. He was the senior explosive expert officer with ATF, or a senior rather, for 20 plus years. And so he did render safe and disassembly of bombs, destructive devices, forensic examination, providing documents and determinations on devices, expert testimony, blah, blah, blah. You guys get the idea. This guy spent 3 decades doing this. And I'm going to scroll down to where I think it's most relevant. He goes through the parts of black powder and some of the other constituents, the summary of the findings that he did after he went through the FBI's filings. There are about 32 pages in this filing. A huge chunk of it, maybe 20 plus pages, are just the FBI's filing from this case. And here's where I think it gets really, really interesting. Pipe bombs as explosive weapons is where we're at. Is that it? No. Yeah, that's where I want to go. Okay, pipe bombs as explosive weapons. There's some common improvised explosive devices encountered. The most common are pipe bombs. They're dealt with by bomb disposal units in the United States, and pipe bombs are generally made from steel or plastic, and their corresponding fittings. Pipe bomb is made from a metal pipe. It's relatively simple, can be easily fashioned using a threaded length of galvanized water or gas pipe, and then 2 threaded ends. Typically, they're filled with a low explosive powder, easy to obtain, and sensitive to flame initiation. So then we get into what we've got going on with this guy. And how interesting, because his issue is that after evaluating what they had, the equipment he had, the way that it was composed, and the nature of those particular devices, he doesn't believe that they would actually work. He thinks that there wasn't going to be enough explosive capability for the explosive filler to actually overcome the strength of the pipe, break into fragments, and actually cause the damage that it is meant to do. And so he read the lab reports, the same thing that he used to generate as an ATF agent, and came up with his finding. And this is a long, long finding in here. But his claim is that these weren't actually bombs. Or, to just phrase it the way that my buddy Steve Friend likes to talk about it, the bombs would have been bombs on January the 5th if they had actually been bombs. The major problem with the bomb not being a bomb was that it was missing the explosive part, the explosive powder. And he goes through a significant amount of material talking about it's a trial and error process. There are certain very specific types of ratios that have to exist for the chemicals in there. And there's no evidence that was done. And he actually goes into how the black powder was supposedly mixed, allegedly in a Pyrex bowl with a spoon or something, and that it shows that it was not properly mixed, and that you need to actually have, very fine powder so that it can actually, all the chemicals can all interact with each other at the same time. And just because something is flame positive, we pointed out one of the bombs had negative flame tests where they tried to ignite it with flame and it didn't burn. The other did. Just because some parts of the powder will actually ignite doesn't mean that it's enough to actually initiate an explosive reaction that has enough pressure and power to send those bombs off. So there you go. His other piece was that the 9-volt battery connected to the steel wool would not generate enough heat and resistance to be actually initiate that sort of flame that was required to be able to get these things to explode. And so in his expert opinion, and this is what he gets paid for, and obviously he's a defense witness, so he's paid to be able to come up with it. They found somebody who was going to say the thing that they wanted. Just turns out it's a pretty credible person, that these likely were inoperable, which is something that I was briefed on at the time. So for those of you that are paying attention to this story, we're dealing with a government that has no problem lying to your face. I didn't have any political agenda on January 13th of 2021 when I asked, hey, were these real bombs? And I was told, no, they looked very bomb-like. These things were inert. My agenda was really simple. I have a surveillance team. I'm going to be working with people that I care about. I've got friends who have kids. They have wives. They've got to go home at the end of the day. How close can we get to these a-holes? We didn't know who they were. We didn't know what relevance they had to the case, whether or not they had other explosive devices. Were there functional bombs dropped on the Capitol on January 5th? That was the question. And the answer was no. I've got friends that are in the FBI that found the exact same thing at the exact same time because they had buddies in the bomb tech squad, which means the FBI is lying about this. And if they'll lie to you about setting up somebody to cover up whatever the hell they're covering up, and I do believe it's a cover up, then what else would they lie to you about? I mean, they're willing to put someone who didn't do the crime in prison indefinitely, and they are fighting tooth and nail so they can win the case, not get the due process. And again, if the government is willing to cede the authority to do violence on other people's behalf, and it's willing to abuse its own authority, which is to violently come into somebody's home and interrupt it. And by the way, apparently through that search warrant that they served and the arrest of Brian Cole on December the 4th of last year, they did so in such a way that they didn't help the neighbors. They couldn't have believed that there were real bombs if they wouldn't let people evacuate from their own homes. If you thought that somebody had bombs in their home and bomb-making materials and you thought they were a dangerous bomber that needs to be locked up forever, wouldn't you want to make sure that the houses that were adjacent on either side were not there in case something were to happen? You can always replace the house. You may not be able to replace your spouse that was in the garage when a freaking pipe bomb goes off next door and takes out something. They didn't do that. All right. Again, the messaging, and I think this was all done for messaging. I think it was that the Trump administration, just like John Solomon, was looking for a win. It tells me that too, because they fired Steve Wren for calling them so damn thirsty for a win, and they thought that was relevant, and they cited it in his termination letter. All right, and all that comes back to this major failure. Again, if people had saw a lot of wins, you'd have a lot more patience with what is going on. You'd have way more patience with an administration that was delivering you regular wins and then also saying, hey, but we're also having some hardship. We're struggling on some of this stuff. So let's talk about Jeffrey Epstein and the files real quickly. It's been a fraction of the DOJ's records have been released. It's been a month since the deadline. Representative Ro Khanna said that the delay is an obstruction of justice. Guess what? If only there were people who could deal with that. If only there was a DOJ that was required to be accountable to some organization, some sort of check and or balance. It turns out they're going to turn around and fund this thing at 100%, aren't they? Does anybody think they're going to withhold funding because of the Jeffrey Epstein files that are required by federal law to be released? And let that be just a microcosm for you. If they're willing to shirk and flout their refusal to obey federal law, this is the federal government required by the authorizing agency, the authorizing branch. They're not going to go do what they're required to do. The legislator has voted. President Trump signed it into law. The Epstein Transparency Act says you must release these things. And the DOJ turns around and goes, but I am tired. We are going to have a nap. We are not going to do this. They spent months and hundreds of thousands of man hours, from what we can tell, like thousands of people doing hundreds of hours to redact and to prepare this stuff for release. And then when they're told, yeah, release it all, they go, no, we're not going to do that. Not interested. The delays have frustrated Epstein victims. They brought warnings of repercussions from the co-authors like Tom Massey and Ro Khanna. That's a Republican and a Democrat. Ro Khanna tends to be kind of like squishy in the middle for the Democrats on some things. Massey claimed in a statement that Attorney General Bondi is making illegal redactions, withholding key documents that would implicate associates of Epstein. We don't know. Maybe Massey's right. Maybe he knows more than he's leading on. I tend to believe that might be the case. I also have a real problem with the fact that they've just decided that they are going to do federal law the way that they see fit, and there is no accountability. And is anyone going to go, this is outrageous? You're going to lose your funding. No, not at all. Ro Khanna says they need to release the FBI witness interviews, which name other men, so that the public can know who was involved. And that's why Massey and I are bringing inherent contempt against Bondi, and we request a special master to oversee this process. The DOJ has decided they don't want to do that. That seems problematic, doesn't it? Is that not problematic? So what are our fearless legislators, the defenders of the republic, the people who convinced whistleblowers to come forward or said that they would in fact champion the causes of whistleblowers, that they were going to go out there and make the moves so that we could get some version of justice? What are those people doing? Anything? Well, they're holding hearings and they're asking for things that are going to be hidden because sources and methods don't get disclosed. And they already know this. So here's Jim Jordan rolling up his sleeves and going on Fox, which seems like what he's best at doing. My disgust for this guy is higher every single day. And honestly, I would prefer lying Democrat operatives in office. I can at least look at them and go, I know you're lying. At least you didn't tell me you were on my team in the first place. I'm sort of okay with that. I prefer people lie to my face than do this.
Can you tell us what to expect at this upcoming hearing on Thursday?
Well, one of the first questions I think we want to ask him is, you paid a confidential human source $20,000. Who's this individual? What'd you pay him for? Was this the only payment? Were there multiple payments? And maybe the big question is, why did you have to pay him? You're Jack Smith. You're the special counsel. You can subpoena and depose just about anybody you want. What were you doing paying this individual? What kind of information was he giving your investigation? So I think that's one of the many questions our committee will have for the special counsel. I mean, it starts to sound a little bit like 10 years ago when the Comey FBI was paying Christopher Steele, when they paid a foreigner to write this bogus document, the dossier, that started this 10-year-long attack on President Trump we've seen from the...
Yeah, let's just take it back to Russiagate, just Bongino style, Patel style, $20,000. Do you know who would know who paid that? The FBI, because the FBI would have been the group that did it. Who runs the FBI? Kash Patel. Does Jim Jordan need to go through this theater? Nah. Could Pam Bondi release that information over to the House for whatever reason they're going to need it? Yes. But don't worry about that. Let's give you guys theater. All right? Let's pretend like this somehow has something to do with Russiagate. Have they changed anything statutorily because of Jack Smith being there when they could actually easily go around and get that information? Nah. So, all we see is more of the same. And do you love it? Are we dumb enough to just say, yeah, this is what we want? Do you believe the arrests are coming? Any moment, guys. In a couple of days, you're going to get what you wanted, just like you did in July of 2025. Do you remember how happy you were July of 2025? That was before Charlie Kirk was shot. You remember how psyched you were about how much transparency was coming down and how everything was going the right way and the conspiracy charges? Do you remember the conspiracy charges against all the people that were involved in setting up Donald Trump? Or whatever they're selling you? You remember?
And I think next week, over the next 10 days, the base who's been wondering, where's all that accountability? They're going to get some big surprises over the next week concerning...
Yeah, that was big surprises. I mean, I'm surprised that people keep buying it. That's what I'm surprised. I'm surprised that people can lie to your face and then they keep getting into office. And I'm surprised that we pretend like, because normal people don't act like that. By the way, if you had a neighbor and they came up and they're like, hey man, can I borrow $100? You're like, sure, okay, I guess so. And you give them $100 and they, and then they're like, hey, I'll pay you next week. I'll pay you next week. I'll pay you next week. How many weeks are they not going to pay you before you're like, this guy's never going to give me that money back? I'm never lending him again. Then he comes back, hey, can I borrow another couple $100? Nope. I'm only giving money away now because that's what I did last time. I gave you money and you didn't pay it back. Well, how many times can someone lie to your face before you just go like, this person is just a liar? So I'm only going to interact with them under that assumption. And if they ask me for something, I always assume that I'll get nothing back in return. That's kind of where we should be at right now. That's how normal people would interact. So how in the world do these people get reelected? If we have any say on this whatsoever, how would they get reelected? Could they get reelected? Utterly unlikable people, lying, grifting sacks of shit out there, not doing anything, not even doing the job that they're meant to do, not even in a good way. What they're doing is they're just maintaining all of the problems. We're riding this thing right off the cliff. They lie to your face and then they get reelected, don't they? This is a great example. We started off with an example from Spanberger. This maybe is the best governor doing the Spanberger routine. This is Gavin Newsom. He'll do what Spanberger said. He'll hold that press conference. He'll celebrate it. He'll press release it. And 10 days later, he will go out and say, I never did that. That wasn't something I did. Why would I? I wouldn't do that. He will lie to your face. And this is probably the guy who's going to end up as a serious contender for the White House in 28. At least he thinks he is. That's why he's messaging like this. And he'll probably have a real serious base of support, despite the lies.
So I want to just take a minute to thank California Democrats, led by Governor Newsom. Our police do not cooperate with ICE. We don't.
California cooperates with ICE.
Nothing I dislike more than the politician that sits there and lies to you. And we all just sit there rolling our eyes going, give me a break.
He's just like us. He also rolls his eyes at politicians, doesn't he? Who buys that? The same people that buy Ashley Sinclair, the same people that buy what Jim Acosta is selling, the same people. We have an ignorance crisis in this country. The same people that think that the problems are not the actual problems and that maybe screaming about the symptoms are somehow going to fix the actual disease. And the disease is that our constitutional republic it's fake. It's not even there. Every day I wake up more and more. Maybe that's what's been bothering me for so long. I realize that we don't have any say in this thing. And that's where people come up with like wild things like lizard people. I don't, it's not serious. What's serious is that people have just decided that they would like to be rulers of the ashes, that they want to quibble over control of something that they know is failing, but as long as they get theirs in this life, then they're good to go. That's really scary stuff to me. All right, I've got a couple of other little clips in here. Let me break for a second, take a deep breath. Follow us on Rumble. Follow us on YouTube. Give us a like and share it. Subscribe to the channels, especially if you guys want to. We can't seem to grow very high on Rumble, even though we're in the top 50 every single day. Like every day, we get the most interactions and we have the most favorable audience. We still can't grow on Rumble. You can grow on YouTube, and we grew about 1,000% last year as well, or like 980%. Join us over there. Make sure you guys have a backup. We appreciate all of you guys that are watching. You may hear a Spotify ad here as well. If you're listening, that's at KyleSeraphinShow.com. And the Spotify ads, actually, they're one of our biggest sponsors. So that's just you showing up and listening. We really appreciate you guys being part of that. Let's do a couple of other little fun things. There was a real chaotic moment. There was a moment where the government straight up ceded its ability. And we're going to see a massive litmus test on whether or not this administration, and I don't think they will, does what needs to be done, tit for tat, good for the goose, good for the gander, and that is violations of the FACE Act. That was a really big issue. That was a campaign point for Republicans. Many of you guys remember that. I thought it was really problematic. There are two parts of the FACE Act. I should probably put it on the screen here, so give me 1 second. I have a little highlighted section somewhere over here. There we go. All right. The FACE Act is the free access to clinic entrances. I don't like how this thing is. There we go. Let's zoom in and punch down a little bit. That looks terrible. Okay, 18 U.S.C. 248. You guys can look it up yourself. Free access to clinic entrances. And it tells you that there are certain activities that are prohibited. The prohibited activities are not very complicated. It tells you that you cannot obstruct, you cannot threaten, you cannot use violence to keep people from getting access to religious services or a place of worship. That's it. I'm going to put it on the screen in a better way. Here we go. Just like this. Whoever, by force or threat of force, by physical obstruction, intentionally injures, intimidates, or interferes with, or attempts to injure, intimidate, or interfere with any person lawfully exercising or seeking to exercise the First Amendment right of religious freedom at a place of religious worship. Okay, force or threat of force, physical obstruction, injures, intimidates, or interferes with, or attempts to injure, intimidate, or interfere with. So that's very broad, right? Now we're going to go to people actually doing that. So let's start with this guy. He goes by something like, Lib Farmer or Progressive Farmer. He's apparently a military veteran. He's a guy that is in desperate need of a face punch and is not getting it. He seems like he wants that. Theoretically, the government would have the charter and they would have the monopoly on violence. And they would be like, hey, man, you can't do this. You can comply and go to jail. This is a misdemeanor offense the first time. It's a felony offense the second and third time. There's decent sized fines. You can be imprisoned up to 3 years for repeated violations of this. It's up to a year for the first one. Or nothing could happen, and you could just bust into a church in Minneapolis and do whatever the hell you want.
Today we had the honor to protest with Nikema Armstrong and the Racial Justice Network. Just like Jesus did, we went into that church and we flipped tables peacefully.
You said that you asked the Lord to pray for your house, to pray for you all to get your house in order. That is correct. Well, God understands that. The director of ICE in St. Paul. Justice for
Renee Good! Renee Good! Renee Good!
Yeah, justice for Renee Good has nothing to do with people. What you are doing is you are interfering with, by threat of force or physical obstruction. I would say physical obstruction here. So it's going to be 18 U.S.C. 248 A2 is going to be the clause that's going on right here. That's what's going to be the operational crime. And we've heard from the Associate Attorney General, the Assistant Attorney General for Civil Rights, that they're going to come after it. So we will now see. Will people be held accountable for the FACE Act for doing this? The odds are, I don't think so. In fact, the people that showed up there were cheered. And they were cheered by none other than this dude. This is Don Lemon. Don Lemon. He's formerly of CNN. He's also like Jim Acosta, like totally just a regular journalist, just doing journalism, sitting in his car, saying things that are activism. And we remember, because those of us who paid attention saw what happened on January 6th, some people, like my buddy Steve Baker, walked through a U.S. Capitol while crimes were happening. Some people were trespassing, and that was probably not a big deal. And some people were doing an unguided tour, and that was probably not a big deal. And some people were doing crimes of violence and breaking stuff. If you jump in with the crowd, like our friend Sean Witzman, who's been on this program more than once, Sean was charged and he pled guilty because he said, "Why won't you stand with us, brothers?" In other words, aligning himself with the mob as he was doing gonzo journalism as an independent journalist. Well, here you have an independent journalist telling you, I'm part of the mob. I'm advocating for the mob. And by the way, he actually remained after being asked to leave. So here's a couple little clips of Don Lemon telling you exactly where he stands. Will Don Lemon, who's a high profile sort of lib target, is he going to be faced with FACE Act violations like he should be? And my guess is probably not.
You heard what some of the folks said in there, that this is, they shouldn't be there and, they shouldn't be uncomfortable and this is our house and whatever. That's what protesting is about, is to make people uncomfortable. You may not like it, but I mean, if they went into a church, any church. Watch this guy here, look, he's hugging his kid. I just imagine it's uncomfortable and traumatic for the people here, but again, careful, it's very slippery right here. Yeah. It's uncomfortable and traumatic for the people here, but that's what really, careful, please, really slippery, not kidding. That's what protesting is about. And so you can see the protesters here have gathered over here. They're in the middle of the church. In the beginning of the church service, the pastor was speaking, and Nikema stood up and said her piece, and then the protesters surrounded her. But this is a clandestine mission. I think they found out according to them, this is according to Operation Pull-Up, that one of the pastors here is a member of ICE. And so here we go.
You could talk to the lead pastor.
Yeah.
The audio is hard to hear. You're obviously hearing a bunch of people cheering and screaming and obstructing, right? What's the statute say? Pretty straightforward. Here we go. They are using physical obstruction, standing up, and threat of force. They're interfering with people's lawful exercise or seeking to exercise the First Amendment right of religious freedom at a place of worship. It has to be inside of a church or a synagogue or a mosque. It has to be inside of a place of worship, and they have to meet these basic things. This is a hands down stuff. That's a federal issue now. The FBI can go after anybody that was involved in this stuff. The planning of it, the conspiracy to go in and do that, all that stuff, right? They did the same thing to people on J6. We going to see that? Or are we going to see people defend Don Lemon, of all things? And he did an act of journalism, in his own words. I listened to a bunch of his stuff. It's difficult to listen to. How about people that are going to defend him? And here's some guy, and his name is, I think, Brian Shapiro. I don't know who this guy is. He seems pissed off. He's very mad that people are calling out Don Lemon for what he did.
So my friend Don Lemon went into a church in Minneapolis today,
And there was a protest in that church because it is alleged that the pastor of that church somehow is working with ICE. So, First Amendment right, freedom of speech, there was a protest. Nobody broke any laws. There was no violence. Some would say a church proceeding was interrupted. And now they're blaming Don Lemon for it. Well, let me tell all you MAGA fucks something, and let me be very fucking clear. I would much rather have a church service be interrupted because people are using their First Amendment rights, protesting against what's happening in the streets of Minneapolis. I would much rather have a church proceeding be interrupted than an innocent 37-year-old woman be murdered. That's exactly what happened in Minneapolis. I would rather have a...
Okay, so that's factually not true. So laws were broken, and we just showed you what the law was. And this is going to be the real problem. This is what the crisis of ignorance looks like. You don't have a First Amendment right to protest in the middle of a church. And it turns out if you want to have that right, and if you want that to be enshrined somehow, that you have the ability to go and gather and make your voice heard in some public space that's privately owned, then you should have your Congress do it. This is the crisis of ignorance. And so this is what I see as being the bigger issue. And look, I'll show you, I did a bunch of reading this morning, so we'll just throw this on the screen here. There is significant coverage of what's going on in Minnesota. It is the dominant story outside of what's happening in, the potential grabbing of Greenland. So you've got NPR talking about what the Insurrection Act is. I'll put this in the show notes if you guys want to read about this. New York Times covers a pattern of misconduct towards protesters, but not the conduct of the protesters being misconduct, which is a real thing. You've got the ICE shooting in the updates. There's 3,000 people arrested. That's actually surprisingly effective. So that's kind of interesting. That's ABC News covering that. I know that FBI agents are being asked to travel. This is, they say, per sources. I can confirm to you that there are FBI agents. I know some who have gone that way and they're working there. We know that because they had a rifle stolen and they're happening and people are getting offers to go out there and travel, whether they can do it or not. Are they going to do FACE Act violations the way we did January 6th? Maybe so. I don't know. But NBC News is talking about the plussing up of federal agents who are supposed to have a monopoly on violence. Turns out you've got the Minneapolis police chief who's now worrying what happens when it all explodes. And rather than do crowd control like they're meant to, they're standing off on the side and they're allowing these people to kick back up. This is also part of the crisis of ignorance. This is an ABC poll. The majority of Americans say ICE agents' shooting of Renee Good was unjustified and inappropriate, and that ICE is making cities less safe. So I read through this, and the fact of the matter is like none of these people know what they're talking about. So it doesn't really matter that people don't know or think that it's making Americans less safe. Let me throw one of these on the screen here. 53% of voters say that Good's shooting was not justified. Based on what? Their profoundly deep understanding of federal use of force policies? No, it's based on their feelings. It's based on what TikToks and other nonsense they get, which is a real problem. We have an ignorance crisis here. These people don't know what they're weighing in on, but they have opinions and they get to vote. All of them. There's a few more stories here, and I'll probably link them all if you guys want to do longer reading on this if you're interested. My concern is reading all of this. There are inflammatory things being said by partisan news, clearly. There are tribal carve-outs suggesting more and more violence, and that's going to be the solution. But it's not violence by the state to quell it. Any reasonable person should want less vigilante-style justice on either side, and that's not what's being done. What we get is people who don't even understand the basics of economics, the basics of like what our American system is. I'm hearing people call ICE agents un-American for doing the job that the American Congress requires them to do. Is that not a wild moment? How do you do the same people that don't want a border, that don't even want to define what is or what is not America physically, want to tell you what constitutes American ethos or values? That's a massive ignorance crisis. This lady summed it all up for me. I saw this video. I sort of love it. It just tells me that forget women. By the way, when we say the 19th should be repealed, all I'm saying is that universal suffrage is a terrible idea. That really dumb people having a say in our politics, having a say in how our national system is handled and administered, it scares the crap out of me. There are places where I know, hey, Kyle, you probably shouldn't be voting on this. You don't know the answer. That happens all the time. Like I said, I don't meddle in a lot of foreign politics stuff because it takes a lot of time to look at all sides of what's happening, and it's a bunch of systems that are beyond my comprehension. But I can understand what happens in my own country at some level. I worked in government, so I understand how government works a little bit. I run a family. I understand what values are. I have a pretty good grasp of history, at least in this nation. do I know all the ins and outs of the Ottoman Empire and why people are pissed off at a certain group? No, I don't. Do I have a minor understanding of what happened in Bosnia? Sure. But when I wouldn't go out there and weigh in on Balkan politics, right? For this lady to post this is actually sort of incredible. And her vote counts as much as yours. So I'm not advocating, this woman is a problem because she's a woman. That's not the issue. I would say that ignorant voters are a problem because they're ignorant. And she's already demonstrated she doesn't understand the system. Why would it matter what you think? Why does the Quinnipiac poll matter? What people think about the Renee Good shooting if they don't even know what a good shoot looks like? And they don't. Anyway, I don't want to set it up any further. Here we go.
Can someone smarter than me help me very genuinely understand why I'm supposed to care if people immigrate to the US illegally? Obviously some people are just racist and some people are just stupid. But even left-leaning people say, well, you got to do something about the border. Why? I don't understand why this should bother me in any way if as many people as want to come here. So if somebody could help me understand that would be great, because right now I just don't know why I should give a shit.
She doesn't. So I think that you should probably opt out of the discussion. You probably shouldn't weigh in on that one. You don't understand why it doesn't work. You don't understand that having a social safety net that gives your money that they taxed from you, not very much, obviously, because she probably doesn't make all that much money, but that they're going to take money from you, and then you're going to have an infinite number of people come in and lean on that. And you don't understand how that's a problem. I get it. But if you're the same person that's crying about the cost of goods, which many of them do, then you don't understand why the problem is, because you've put more pressure on the demand side. Well, if you don't understand the cost of housing going up because you've put more pressure on the demand side, then you don't get it. If you've got any problem with spending money on taxes and how it's being allocated, you don't understand any of the problems with that, then maybe not a vote from you would be great. Maybe keep it out. The New York Times has an entire article right now that was on today's paper about urban raids in Minneapolis, and they trial ran the tactics that they were using out in California farm country. And they don't really get into why they're a problem, other than essentially what they did is they profiled certain people that were criminals. This is the tactic. The tactic is basically target one and then grab any targets of opportunity that are in the area. This is kind of a military tactic as well. You go for what's called the high value target, right? The HVT. You hone in on where you want to go. This is a lieutenant. This is a commander. This is a decision maker in an apparatus or organization that we have a problem with. So you go get your actual child sex trafficker. You go get your child pornographer, your gang member that has some sort of, sway or authority, who's done really ugly things. And then anybody else that also happens to fit the criteria of illegal alien that's deportable, you take them too. That's the move. And they're celebrating, of course, it's two Hispanic writers for the New York Times, both in California. They're celebrating the court system blocking some of the tactics being used. That's what they did. It's not just that. There's actual literal basket cases. I've never actually seen a basket case before, so maybe this will be news for some of you. If you're not watching right now, if you're listening on audio and you missed out, you should go over to Spotify for this. You can also go to YouTube, Rumble, and let me tell you the timestamp. We're at 73 minutes in, so go to 73 minutes. This is a literal basket case. I've never actually seen this. I didn't know this was a thing, but in 2026, you can be an actual basket case, and she's singing the Kill ICE Agent song.
Mine eyes have seen the glory of the abolishment of ICE, hanging there from the gallows square. Now won't that be so nice? You know when this is over that you're going to pay the price. Your soul will rot in hell.
Couple problems with this. Number one, if you can't see it, this is a woman wearing a white hoodie, I feel like the Klan used to wear white hoods. Anyway, she's wearing a white hoodie, singing about damnation, which I'm not confident that she even believes in. These are people that use words, but they don't know what it means. And she's wearing a basket on her head. She's a literal basket case. She has a wicker basket instead of a face inside of this hoodie. I've actually never seen this tactic. Maybe you guys know where this is from. I don't know what this is supposed to mean. Is this from a horror movie? or something? Somebody can give me some context on this. I would actually appreciate that. Timestamp what you're talking about. I mean, I guess if you say the basket case lady means this, then maybe I'll understand it. She's singing about your soul will rot in hell. She's singing a hymn, a church hymn, and she's flipped it on its head, and she's celebrating people being hung for doing what? For what is she singing about? She's singing about killing people who are enforcing the laws as passed by our Congress. This is the most obvious example of a crisis of ignorance to me. How come nobody is screaming at the politicians? Why are they not protesting at their congressional representatives' offices and saying, defund this organization, alter the laws and the use of force policy, and do it by the way that would actually be somehow implementable? Do it by budget withholding and do it by line item vetoes or line item appropriations so that you're only going to fund certain things. Go and do the thing that you're supposed to have the power. And the reason that nobody does it, I think, is because we all sort of gently and sort of tacitly acknowledge that violence in the street is the only way that you're going to change anything on this. And you're actually telling me that you don't believe that we have a democracy or a constitutional republic or whatever words you're saying. If your move is to go to TikTok and sing crazy songs, or if your move is to beat the shit out of some guy who's walking on the pavement, and you're going to go ahead and show that the government doesn't even have a monopoly on violence as it should, you're just telling me that you're voting no confidence in a system that we are pretending that actually works. That's what that says to me. And you're a legit basket case. And I'm watching the co-opting of religion right now as an attempt to shame you. Remember the guy that was the veteran with the beard? What's he say? We went into this church and we flipped tables like Jesus did. Isn't that funny? For what? The secular purpose of screaming at people? For your political agenda? Isn't it interesting that he doesn't even know why Jesus flipped the tables? If you guys go back to the story, the whip of cords, Jesus was flipping the tables of the money changers because they were distracting from the actual purpose of the worship service, which was focus on God and being able to worship God. What he's doing is saying, why aren't you standing with your fellow man and doing this thing that we think is necessary? I'm going to play you one more video from that guy, not to get you outraged, because I want you to understand that if you haven't figured out what you're going to do when this comes into your space, we can pretty much acknowledge that the federal government is not going to go in and solve the problem. They're not going to come in with FACE Act. The second piece of it is that the local government, depending on where you live, may not respond or do anything when these folks decide to take the thing that the state is supposed to hold, violence, and they're going to use it their own way. And by the way, threat of violence, forget like words are violence, the threat of violence where you come into a place and you're going to aggressively stop a service for your purposes. The alternative is that you get physically thrown out. And if you're willing to resist that, then they've actually taken on that mantle of violence. I want you to see this, not because I want you to get hyped up about it, but because I want you to say, okay, fine. I go to church on Sunday. If this were to happen, what's our plan? This person is cloaking himself in Christian righteousness, clearly without any interest in that. And he started worshiping this false idol, which seems to me like social media and fame, because he's been all over the place. He's very profane. He's super aggressive about it. Men need to stop this. Unfortunately, that's where it's going to be. The state won't do it. That means that it has to stop at the community level. So be it. What are you going to do?
As you can see, all these pretend Christians, all these comfortable white people who are living lavish, comfortable lives while children are dragged into concentration camps. You're living real life, nice lives with your lattes, doing absolutely nothing for your Latino and Somali brothers and sisters. You come here to a man wearing a suit. Is a preacher? Did Jesus wear a suit? Did Jesus profit off the words? No! Jesus would dine with immigrants. Do not touch me. Touch me again and see what happens.
Hey, you can't.
You are a fake Christian. Why are you not standing with your Somali and Latino communities? Why do I not see you out at Whipple every day protesting this attack on humanity?
Why are you not doing the thing that I want you to do? Why can I not see the log that is in my own eye while I try to go for the speck in yours? Oh, wait. Oh, you want to use scripture? There's plenty of people that could have this discussion, but he's doing it by overwhelming aggression. He's doing it by violence and just even the vocal indication that he's willing to do something aggressive. And by the way, he goes by the handle "Da Woke Farmer." Cool, bro. What are you farming? Rage. That's what I see. So, end of the day, what is your plan? How does it work? I would suggest to you that there's a basic term in or basic sort of order of operations in law enforcement, and you can do the same thing with your own security teams in your own places of worship, wherever that is. And it looks like this: ask, tell, make. If you have a problem that the state is not going to do, they're not going to handle it. They're not going to go and do the duty that they have to pick up the mantle of violence as required to stop people, then you have to ask them nicely, then you have to tell them, and then you have to make them leave. There is no other option. That's what has to happen. That's my recommendation to you. Take it or leave it. But people who are forewarned, they are also forearmed to handle this sort of thing. If you have not paid attention to the growing sort of outrage that these people are getting, there's a lot of money in that TikTok video that goes everywhere. There's a lot of money in donations that can support it. And it turns out all of that is the conspiracy that we heard from John Solomon that they should be looking into. Conspiracy to violate the FACE Act seems broad and big. Are we going to see our government step up? And all they're going to probably do, we're just going to go and speculate, is they're going to prove to you they're not interested in doing any of the stuff that they're meant to do. That's when the state has failed. So if we acknowledge that the possibility of our state being failed at this point is real, even if it's at a sort of a regional or a local level, the only thing that keeps failed states from like completely imploding and swallowing up the population around them are when the community says, okay, fine, we're going to step into the gap. Unfortunately, we have to do that. I don't know. It doesn't make me feel good because we had an opportunity. I thought we had a real opportunity. The difference is that the quote unquote MAGA agenda went really aggressively partisan when it really should have gone towards de-weaponization. They should have been deconstructing some of these things. And that meant pulling money away from these organizations. I'll show you one last thing, kind of showing you what happens when the state doesn't do its job. I showed you that guy getting the crap beat out of him. This is Nick Sorter. This is what the FBI is going to respond to: a stolen camera. Now, don't get me wrong. I have nice cameras. If someone stole my camera, I'd be pissed. I don't think I would hang it out where they could see it, but whatever. Nick Sorter loses a camera. He got a chance to go on Fox and then add to it the federal government's FBI rapid response account said, we're on it. On what? The theft of a camera? Or are you on the fact that we have now a failed state in Minnesota and it's exhibiting itself in Minneapolis, where violence is no longer the only space or purview of the state, local, and federal government? This is Nick Sorter getting his camera stolen.
Hey, get! What did she just do? She fucking...
Oh, shit. Okay, it's okay.
She took Nick's camera. She just stole Nick's camera. Let's get her.
No, give him the camera!
Just tell her to give him the camera back.
And Nick apparently holds onto the car and goes sliding down an alley, which is a really good way to get yourself seriously injured. Over $1,000 camera. Yeah, it's a big deal. I'm sure he can resource that one. Probably not a federal problem. Wouldn't it be nice if you had cops that would handle it?
Looking for the car, but you guys got to do us a favor and stay out of this area. All right, we don't want anything else escalating to this point again. We got a lot of reports.
Well, we just don't. I mean, I guess
it's a felony versus them just not liking our.
I understand we get attacked and assaulted. By the way, they tried to steal my camera earlier, and we're the ones told to leave.
I'm not justifying what they did, but we're trying to keep the peace at the end of the day. And bottom line is, you guys obviously aren't from the area.
But it's like if I'm a woman and I get raped for wearing tight jeans, and it's like, well, you shouldn't have been there. It's
okay, like, but that's what we're saying.
That's not what they're saying, but that's exactly what they're saying. They're saying you're not from the area and you shouldn't have been there. And so you shouldn't be in a place where you might have your camera stolen because we're trying to keep the peace. But it really becomes pretty obvious that they're actually not trying to keep the peace, because if they were, they'd be holding people back from these ICE operations. They would be doing the thing that was in the public's best interest. And by the way, it is in the public's best interest that people who show up with a camera don't get it ripped off by some Somali a-hole, and then they go and they run off, and then the cops' answer is, you really shouldn't go there. It's really a no-go zone. We don't go there and mess around, so you really shouldn't go there and mess around. Either we have an America or we don't. I would argue that the idea of what we have of America is not really there. It just doesn't exist in the way that people want to, and we lost it. We lost it during my lifetime. That's what people are upset about. And the real part that gets people most upset is that they actually got sold on the idea that there was going to be something done. The John Solomon, hang tight, next week, you're going to be so excited about what you find out. What are you excited about? What happened? It's a lot of nothing. I'm seeing people called black pillars for being simple recognizers of reality at this point. That's not a black pill. That's just you being honest. The question is what happens next? The answer should be stop focusing on the federal government. We're going to talk about the failures of it because it's really easy to see that's where the problem is. All that should do is motivate you to solve things locally at the community level, in your own church, in your own neighborhood. I think I told you guys this. That's what I thought needed to be done before the election, actually. It's like, it should remind you, we're going to see failures. It doesn't matter who wins the election. How much massive change has actually gone down? The prices, they're not federal issues. None of these people are acting conservatively. It's my favorite question. What are you conserving? Oh, nothing? Oh, you're conserving your job, Jim Jordan. You're conserving your job. You're conserving the federal budgets that continue to maintain massive amounts of spending for things that give minimal value to the everyday person, to the point where when there's a federal government shutdown, nobody knows. None of you noticed for the entire time that we had a federal shutdown, right? You just didn't. And if you call that out and say, hey, by the way, I noticed that the federal government didn't do anything for me when it was quote unquote shut down, you're the problem. I can't help but reflecting, we're like at a 1997 moment here. There was a reason why the book Term Limits was so highly anticipated. I'm starting to see more and more people advocate for violence. And I don't know that violence is the answer, but I know that it's still on the menu. It's certainly on the menu for one side. And the people that really know how to do violence, which I would suggest to you is people on the right, actual conservatives, people who care about fitness and family and care about firearms and care about serving in the military and learning tactics and capabilities, the hard skills crew. Doesn't mean there's not some on the left. I'm sure there are. But doggone it, the people that don't want this, it gets really, really ugly when they decide there's no other choice. You've backed them into a wall, and so they're going to have to act. And we're getting closer and closer to that moment. And that's not me being a black pillar, and that's not me being someone who's like advocating for it. I'm just saying that people are eventually going to go, screw it. A small group of people is going to have to stop paying taxes and stop and call their bluff. If the federal government's not going to come do the thing the federal government's supposed to do, if the state government's not going to come in and protect the things that the state's supposed to do, then what do we need you for? Your sole responsibility is keeping the peace by having a monopoly on violence. And we're seeing in certain areas, that's not happening. That's not insurrection type talk. That's just recognizing the situation on the ground and saying, okay, fine. So plan accordingly. Take care of yourself. Take care of your family. Take care of your community. Take care of your worship house. Just have some contingencies put into place. It's real easy. And then you have to execute them. Not like the people did during COVID, but you have to actually do it. That's the hardest part. Plan, practice, and then execute when needed. In the same way you have to ask, you have to tell, and you have to make things happen. So, all right, that's the show for today. I'm going to be flying to Las Vegas. We're going to be doing some stuff that I think is really interesting, which is like going out to SHOT Show and seeing the firearms world. And there's a lot of neat innovations that are happening. It's one of the craziest things about this time is that like there's some incredible stuff that you can have access to, technologies and advancements and neat gear and kit and gadgets. That's kind of like my favorite thing. And at the same time, we're watching things crumble around where you might actually need some of that stuff. So we're going to go do some coverage of that. We're going to meet with some of our sponsors. We're going to talk to the guys at Silent. Probably going to sit down with a lawyer from GOA, who works for Gun Owners of America, kind of talk about the situation for firearms and rights like that. If the 1A fails, the 2A's there. The left is seeing it as well. I'm not mad at them. Just saying, it's part of the discussion and the conversation. So check us out over on Rumble and YouTube. Give us a like there if you guys are watching. If you've been holding off, don't be stingy with that thing. It costs you nothing. Just hit the thumbs up. I'd appreciate it if you did. Subscribe if you're new to the channel, if you've never seen it before and this commentary was interesting to you. If you want to join the community, you can do so over on locals at kyleseraphin.com. And if you were listening and you can't see any of the things that are on the screen right now and you're like, I wonder what's on the screen, go to kyleseraphinshow.com. Check out our program on Spotify. That would be appreciated. Let's see if I can give you something that is of something just kind of change it up as we get this week started off here. How about a fun little conversation with JP? He did a spoof of the Josh Hawley testimony that took place in Congress about what an unserious nation we are. So this is what we do instead of actually doing the work of the federal government. We have hearings, and sometimes we get to make fun of those hearings, and this is a great example of that.
Seriously, can you believe this guy?
I wasn't sure I understood your answer to Senator Moody a moment ago. Do you think that men can get pregnant?
Gosh, that's a really good question. I've never really thought about that before. Can men get pregnant? Oh, we didn't cover that in medical school. I mean, I think that's a really confusing question, honestly, and I don't understand what the goal of it is.
Well, the goal is just the truth. So can men get pregnant?
My boyfriend always pulls out, so I never have yet. If that's what you were wondering. I'm not like that.
You just said a moment ago that science and evidence should control, not politics. So let's just test that proposition. Can men get pregnant?
I'm not being political here. I work with a variety of different patients with a variety of different identities. They all have different names. There's a variety of different species. And if what you're asking me is, do I support the global fight against orca whales, then I would just say I think all amphibians deserve equal pay. Does that answer the question?
Can men get pregnant?
Oh, were you asking me?
Do science and evidence...
JP does such a good job with those edits. I also think that all amphibians deserve equal pay. I'll get on the line for that too. So hopefully you guys do as well. Drop us a comment, like the show, share it with a friend. Hope you guys have a great Monday. I'll see you on the other side in Las Vegas, which is one of my least favorite places to go to do one of my most favorite things, which is look at gear. Strange times we live in. All right. God bless. See you guys tomorrow.
Thanks for listening to the Kyle Seraphin Show, streamed live weekdays on rumble.com/Kyle Seraphin. Follow Kyle on Twitter, Truth Social, and Instagram at Kyle Seraphin.